The cars proceeded down toward the Capitol in the distance, bearing with them the hopes of the country for a new deal.
The Depression was a tumultuous, complicated period of time. But Franklin Roosevelt's fundamental conviction was that you had to show that the system could respond, and that therefore the system was worth defending.
The fate of democracy hangs in the balance. This is not an understatement. This is a moment in which leadership is vitally important.
This is a day of national consecration. First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. This nation asks for action, and action now. The people of the United States have not failed in their need. They want direct, vigorous action.
His first inaugural, he talks about how we cannot let the Depression paralyze our efforts or convert advance into retreat. I've always thought it was fascinating that he used the word paralyze. And I don't know how conscious it was, but it was a sign that he saw the world as motion. And he no longer could move literally, so he would use all of his energies to help the country move figuratively.
He sets up an expectation from the American public that you have to help me. If we want to get through this problem, I can do some things, but you have to do other things.
And the most important thing he did was to say the people are not responsible for this depression. The failure of leadership is responsible. And I am here to give that leadership. And with that leadership, there would be hope, there would be jobs. Here is this paralyzed man who is making the people who feel paralyzed feel hope once again. And he said, we need action, and we need action right now. And if the Congress will not give me what I need, I will use the broad powers of the executive as if we were at a war.
We all know what we're up against, but now it's our turn to fix it.
The economy has been plunging for 3 years, and it still hadn't found bottom. And the critical thing at that particular moment was that the banking system had seized up. One of the reasons the banks failed is the banks had taken that money and invested it in the stock market. And so when the stock market went down, they didn't have enough money to pay their depositors. So banks were simply closing. They had already closed by the thousands. And it looked as though America's national financial system was on the verge of utter collapse.
It's important to realize there was no safety net in those days. If a bank collapsed, the federal government wasn't going to help you.
It is a real crisis, a crisis that no one could ever have imagined hitting one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Was capitalism failing? Had capitalism actually failed?
Many people thought the United States of America as a political entity was over, that our capitalist system was over.
The country's on the edge of a cliff, but we're not going to let it fall. The first thing we're going to do is to declare a banking holiday. It'll prevent further runs and buy time for Secretary Wooden to draft some legislation.
You're going to have to expand presidential authority if you want to get anything done.
Precisely. But first, we have to figure out which banks can be saved and which have to close.
March 5th, essentially his first act as President of the United States is to close every bank in America.
The banks were going to close for a week. They're going to open Monday morning.
Now, he uses a wonderful phrase. He calls it a bank holiday.
And that gave Franklin a chance to call Congress into an emergency session. And incredibly, in the space of several hours, they passed this huge emergency banking bill.
Divide up the banks into three categories. Those banks that are healthy enough to reopen,
those banks that can reopen but are going to need help from the federal government, and those banks that are so bad that there's not much we can do about them.
New money backed by real assets pours from Uncle Sam's treasury to revitalize the country's commerce.
This emergency banking bill will allow them to have currency shipped to the banks that are stable enough to handle it. Planes are on the tarmac ready to fly the currency to each one of the banks.
Before Roosevelt, before this moment in American history, the federal government had never taken it upon itself to bolster an industry the way the federal government was bolstering the banking industry. It was quite a striking, even a revolutionary thing for the government to undertake.
Franklin's afraid that once they've opened the banks again, that people will then rush to take their money out because they haven't had it for a whole week, and then the whole system would collapse.
This was 0 hour. So FDR has got the biggest challenge for a leader, which is make people feel a little bit reassured, and at the same time, get them to do something that their instincts tell them not to, which is keep your money in the banks.
Franklin decides on a Sunday night before the Monday opening, he's going to give a fireside chat to the people. This is really the first presidential fireside chat.
Nervous?
What's there to be nervous about? I just have to convince the entire American public to trust me with their life savings.
In 13 minutes.
Got it. NBC says ready to go. CBS is live.
10 seconds, Mr. President. And 5, 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it has been done and what the next steps are going to be. This bank holiday, while resulting in great inconvenience, is affording us the opportunity to supply the currency necessary to meet the situation. It is possible that when the banks resume, people who have not recovered from their fear may again begin withdrawals. Let me make it clear that the banks will take care of all needs. I can assure you that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress.
80% of the adult radio audiences are listening. And it was said that streets were empty at the time because everybody's sitting staring at their radio.
We have provided the machinery to restore our financial situation. It is up to you to support and make it work. It is your problem no less than it is mine. Together, we cannot fail.
Remarkable piece of work. In the space of just less than 15 minutes, he calls on the American people. And he says, basically, we have done what we can do here in Washington. Now we look to you. And with your support, our work will succeed. And so he puts the American people essentially into potential cooperation with the administration.
Franklin gives this address on Sunday night, and the big question is what's going to happen tomorrow morning when we reopen the banks.
The next day would be the true test. Did this work? If it fails, then it will mean the whole financial system will fail in the very first week of his presidency.
It is not an exaggeration to say that the country is on the verge of collapse.
Miss Lehan, today's lunch menu.
Jelly bouillon.
Mrs. Nesbitt says it's nutritious.
I like it.
Have you heard anything?
Not yet. Maybe we should cancel the president's lunch because of the bouillon?
Well, no, there's two reasons. No, I'm concerned if things don't go our way with the banks.
They will. They have to.
It's Monday morning. And there's long lines at the bank again, and they panic. Maybe they've come to take their money out. Did this work?
We should have heard something by now.
You think it's a bad sign?
No news is no news. Yes. I see. Thank you. They're standing in line. They're bringing their money back. We're going to be okay.
They're actually carrying satchels of money to bring their money back to the banks. So that night, headlines, confidence in banking system resumed, banking crisis over.
And the only thing that has changed is FDR's leadership and his ability to convince the American public that he has solutions, that things will get better, and it is an extraordinary moment in American history. FDR essentially ends the banking crisis in one simple radio broadcast.
Franklin Roosevelt made government an ambient force in the lives of people who might otherwise have only encountered the government at the post office or perhaps the subsidized railroad or something.
People felt that FDR had saved their lives, saved their children's life, given them a chance to go forward.